The Winter 2023 campaign has been out for nearly a month already, and I've yet to really discuss or create any videos on it. So today I'm finally going to get into it and make a tier list. I'll go over each track individually, give my thoughts on each one, then rank it on a plus-minus rating scale. At the end, I'll give my final adjustments, adjusting each track against each other in the said tiers, and just give my final thoughts on the campaign overall. Let's jump into it. Track number 1 honestly does not have a whole lot going on for it. At the start, you just got a big long straight with a big jump, then you got a small turn to the right, follow that up with another long straight, a small turn to the left, and then another long straight into the finish. I guess what saves it a little bit is that it's a white track, it's track number 1, there's not supposed to be a ton going for it, but I wish there was just something a little bit extra that this track had, so it just wasn't so plain and boring. So for that reason, I'm going to put track number 1 in the plus tier. Track number 2, I think, is an excellent track. We got like technical dirt. At the start, you have to manage your gears so you don't get a bad gear up while turning. The middle section, you can do a little bit of wiggling to get a little extra speed. Jump from the right to the left side to manage airtime, and then to finish off the track, a couple of tight turns as well. I think this is an excellent white track. Higher skilled players are going to do these little things to gain time, and lesser skilled players are going to also have an easy time finishing this track. So it's overall just a very, very good track, and that's the reason why it'll be the first track in the plus tier. So, track number 3, we got a little bobsleigh section at the start, followed by a jump out of the bobsleigh, and that'll bring us to a couple of small patches of ice, which you have to manage your slide outs on, try to keep as much grip as possible, and then just drive down this little slope into the finish. Overall, I think the track is just good. I could do without the bobsleigh section at the start though. Ever since the ice update, bobsleigh has just been a nightmare for me. I don't know if you want an action key for it, steer 100%. I just generally am very confused about bobsleigh in general. You got people, again, saying that you should use an action key. You got the dev saying you want to steer 100%. So generally, it's just a confusing and poor experience for me anytime I encounter a bobsleigh. I do like the rest of the track though. I do think managing the ice slides is pretty unique and interesting experience. It's fun to try to get like perfect entrances and exits to that. And I generally, just enjoy the second part of the track. So for that reason, I'm just going to put this one in the plus tier. Track number 4 features a bunch of sausage blocks at the start. Follow that up with like some weird grass section and then a big auto slide into some more sausage, and at the end you got a reactor boost down in which you kind of have like this zoop finish with the booster, and generally I think that's the downfall of the track. There's a lot of things to really like about this track. I like the starts, I like everything except for that zoop ending. It's so random and it just takes a lot of skill out of what you can possibly do. Like on this run, I did not get a great zoop, so that cost me a lot of time. So generally, I think this is just not a great track due to that randomness in the end, so it'll be put in the minus tier. There's not a ton to say here about track number 5, just a big, long straight after one small little turn here. Basically, you're just trying to get the best wiggles possible to get as much speed as possible. And that's basically all it is for the track. So a rather boring one here, kind of in the same vein as track number 1. So I'll be putting it in the plus tier. Track number 6, kind of again, similar to track 1 and track 5 for me. Just 2 jumps here at the start where you're pretty much just driving straight. Then you have one turn and where you then go into another very long straight. Outside of a possible skip on this track in which you jump out to the right into the stands, so you can drive back onto the track and get a booster you otherwise wouldn't get with the big jump, there's really not much to this track. So again, for the same reasons as 1 and 5, I will be putting this one into the plus tier. So track number 7, we got some more bobsleigh at the start, followed by a big dirt section, and then yet another bobsleigh at the end. Again, I don't really care for bobsleigh, so the track just automatically kind of loses points for me there. The dirt section is alright, but yeah, multiple bobsleighs kind of ruin the track for me. And as well as there's yet another skip on this track in which you can grab this boost out to start, fly over the reset, and then just get a crazy amount of speed for the rest of the sections. Very common theme in this campaign is a lot of skips with boosters, so that is going to diminish some tracks for me as well. With all these things combined, you think I absolutely hated the track, but I do think it's just okay, and for that reason, I'll be putting it in the plus tier. For track number 8, we have 3 laps to drive. Very rare triple lap track here. I don't know if there's been any in previous campaigns or even track of the day. It seems like 2 is usually the most they make you drive, but here we got 3 laps to drive. Feel like this is one of the better tracks up until this point. Maybe just behind track number 2, I feel. A lot of things to manage here, especially when you get to the higher speeds. You got to start drifting around that corner. Then very hard corner right there, getting around that little grass piece. Then you got to get very early into this wall ride and ride it as high as possible. So yeah, a lot of things to manage on this one, which makes it more enjoyable than a lot of the previous tracks, which just had a lot of nothing, to be honest. But yeah, so for those reasons, I think I'll be putting this one with track number 2 in the plus tier. For track number 9, we got a whole lot of plastic, and we got a lot of managing little slide outs here and there on the turns. And then for the sausage block sections, you also want to reduce your airtime as much as possible. Just a lot of things to micromanage on this one, which I think makes it a lot of fun compared to a lot of the previous tracks thus far. But yeah, just overall, yeah, just really enjoyed this one. So for that reason, I'll be putting this one in the plus tier. Track number 10, and the final green track, is a full speed track, and full speed is one of my favorite types of tracks. So at the start here, you can speed slide this section, and then we got a nice wall ride, and we'll follow that up with another section in which you can speed slide. So it's no surprise that since I like full speed tracks that I very much enjoyed this track. Though I don't think it's good enough for a triple plus rating, it'll be our 3rd track in a row that gets a plus rating. For the first track in the blue section, obviously track number 11 here. Yeah, this track is certainly something. We got a little bit of dirt and grass mixed in this track, but its main focus is really on these uphill, like sideways drifts, which are very awkward to do. I just did not care for them at all. And with that being like the main focus of the track, I just didn't really care for it in general. So for that reason, track number 11 will be put in the minus tier. Track number 12 is quite a mess for me. I didn't really care for this track at all. Start out with some bobsleigh with a little bit of booster, and then a jump into another booster on top of snow. And then just whatever this mess is coming up right here. Didn't really care for it. Got the author medal on this track, and I am definitely not going back to drive this one again. So yeah, just a complete mess, and that's the reason why I'm giving this one our first minus rating. Track number 13 is a complete bobsleigh track, really, with one small road section in the middle. Of course, it has a reactor boost at the very start, which you could take backwards and skip over a majority of things and get so much extra speed that you otherwise wouldn't have. Of course, me not liking bobsleigh anymore really is a huge detriment to this track, obviously, and add on the skips on top of that, this results in another poor track rating here, with this one getting put in the minus tier. Track number 14, again, another blue track that I just really didn't like. You'll start off with this weird wall ride there, down, and then a fine jump here, but then really my issues start here with this weird wall ride with a booster where it's just very hard to see, then an awkward feeling drift here, and then a drop down in which your car just completely blocks your view on where you're supposed to drive the upcoming section, and then another booster wall ride where it's very hard to see where you're supposed to be driving yet again. Certainly didn't dislike this one as much as the last two, so we'll be putting this one in the minus tier. Track number 15, the last one in the blue section, and the only blue track that I really cared to drive at all. Start out here with a drift into this dirt section, which you have to try to keep as much speed as possible so you can make this longer jump here. Then follow that up with a couple turns on some sausage blocks, and then after that it's just a little bit on the boring side, some longer straight sections, but overall this is certainly better than any of the other blue tracks. So this will be the only blue track that gets put into a higher tier than minus with a plus rating. Track number 16 is just decent in my opinion. A lot of long straights on this one as well. Like right at the start here, just a big long jump. And after that, some water sections, which feel a little bit inconsistent to me. Very narrow windows to enter and exit those properly. But then after that, some more long straights with just a 180 turn here. Then another very long straight up the hill. Follow that up with a speed check jump, which I don't really care for in any track, even campaigns for that matter. And then just another very long jump into the end. So really just not a lot going for this track, for me at least. I don't know if I'll be really going back to play this one anymore. It's just an alright track, so I'll be putting this one into the plus tier. We have a multi-lap NASCAR track here for track number 17. And really, I'm not the biggest fan of NASCAR tracks, so I feel like this one is better than most. I feel like most NASCAR tracks are fairly boring because they mostly involve very long, very small turns to get around corners, but this one is very fast-paced with a little bit tighter corners than usual. So a little bit more difficult, a little bit more action-packed than the normal NASCAR type tracks. So while I think this is a much better than average NASCAR track, I still don't care for that style, so I'll be putting this one in the plus tier. For track number 18, we have basically a full speed grass track, and I actually enjoyed this one quite a bit. You know, it's got a bunch of different wall ride sections, a few jumping transition spots, all of which result in just a fairly nice and smooth driving experience. I'd say the only part I didn't really like would be this section right here with all the smoke blocking your view. I really don't care for that type of thing in any type of track, so really that deducts a little bit from the track in my opinion. But again, I really enjoyed this track, and that's the reason why it'll be the 5th track put in the plus tier. Track number 19, I definitely flipped my opinion on this one a ton from the first time I played it till now. At first I was like, why would you want to just drive through all this stuff with your engine off? It just seemed very annoying, very low speed. I just didn't care for it at all, but the more I played it, the more I just really enjoyed it. Just a very fun track overall, trying to hunt the perfect lines through these sausage blocks and a little bit of plastic sections as well. Really, I think this is one of the best tracks in the campaign, if not the best track, but at the end here, we'll go over everything again in the tiers, rank them a little bit more how I feel like they should be. But really, yeah, this is one of the best tracks up until this point, so I'll be putting this one in the triple plus tier. For the last red track, track number 20, we got a couple of very long straights and jumps at the start, as well as some ice slides. While not the most boring track, it's also not the most exciting either. Again, just the longer straights. You have a couple of ice turns in this one, and really that's kind of all there is. It feels like this track is just very, very similar to track number 16, but they just replaced the dirt with ice blocks. So very similar to track number 16, this one will also be put in the plus tier. The first track in the black tier, track number 21, is near perfection in my opinion. On top of that, it also features basically every single block type. You got dirt at the start, you also have some road tech areas, you also have ice in here, you have this grass turn right here. Really, just everything just flows perfectly together with that as well. At this point, I've only been playing the campaigns for a few seasons and Trackmania in general for the last few seasons, and I can't picture any track that I've played in the campaigns that I would rather drive than this track. And I generally don't compare campaign tracks to a track of the day track, but this one really feels like a track of the day worthy type of track. It's just that well made. The only small complaints I have about the track is this very bobsleigh section right here. It just feels very awkward, but other than that, I think the track is pretty much perfect. So, of course, I'll be putting this one in the triple plus tier. Track number 22 is also a pretty good track. You have a bunch of different surfaces, road, plastic, and ice, as well as a small section of grass in there. The ice slides are very smooth both on the entrances and exits, and generally all other parts of the track flow pretty smoothly as well, including the transitions. There are a couple of small things I didn't care for on the track though, including an upcoming section here in which you have to drive on grass and then go up a hill which is just a very slow climb. The other would be at the very end, in which you have to have a lot of speed to jump over a wall. If you don't have enough speed, you either crash into the wall or you have to choose to drive to the left of it. Again, those are just a couple of small things I didn't really care for, but overall, again, I thought the track was pretty good. So track number 22 will be put in the plus tier. For track number 23, we basically have an all-dirt track here, and, it's an alright track. The first parts of it are somewhat enjoyable for me, as I've been liking dirt more and more lately, but the longer the track goes on, the less I start to like it. After the start, you have a lot of different types of jumping transitions, like this one right here. Don't really care for that. There are plenty of other transitions that you have to jump as well. And then you got these big uphills and downhills, big swooping turns, and things of that nature that I just don't really care for. Outside of track number 2, there's really no technical dirt in the rest of the campaign. No like gear management, no like staying very close to walls. That's really the type of dirt tracks that I enjoy, not things of this nature. That certainly doesn't make this a bad track, though it's just, again, not something that I really enjoy to drive. So for that reason, I will be putting track number 23 into the plus tier. Track number 24 is certainly one of the tracks in the campaign, and it's not one that I really care to drive at all. While sausage blocks are fairly low on my favorite types of track to drive, I certainly don't hate them. For example, track number 19, I put in the triple plus tier. The problem with this track with the sausage blocks is that they're generally at a very awkward angle to drive on, and that's a problem with regular road as well for me. I generally just don't like driving on them at a very sideways skewed angle. This track also has some not great transitions in my opinion, just very awkward feeling jumps, and then at the end again we have some more awkward angled sausage blocks, but this time you get to drive on it with a reactor boost, so even less fun for me there. So while I don't absolutely, completely hate the track, it's still not one that I really don't think I will be going back to drive. Maybe I'll try for the author medal if I really want it. But yeah, this one will be put in the minus tier. And finally, we are on to the last track, track number 25. The track features a bunch of bobsleigh sections and a bunch of dirt sections, and a few boost sections as well, which of course you can drive over the reactor boost backwards and skip over a reset. Again, very common theme, so it's fitting that the last track also has that issue. Of course, the bobsleigh sections hurt the track for me, as again, I'm just not a fan of bobsleigh anymore. The rest of the track is fairly decent, however, I enjoyed it a bit. The map in general is sort of just chaos. There's really no flow to the track in my opinion. It just feels like a mismatch of objects thrown together, and yeah, that's generally how I feel about this track. Good in some spots, bad in others, and generally just an alright driving track. It's another track where I don't really know if I want to go back and grind it anymore, but we'll see if I want to get all the authors in this campaign. I'm not really sure, but track number 25 and the final track will be put in the plus tier. Alright, to end off here, let's do a little bit of an adjustment, ranking everything on each tier. Track number 12, I definitely would play less than track number 13, just not a good track in my opinion, and yeah, just one I don't really care to drive. I think the minus tier is pretty good how it is. 24, definitely my least favorite, and track number 4, probably, yeah, definitely my favorite in that category. In the plus tier, I would definitely rather play track number 3 over track number 1, so let's put that ahead of that. Track number 5, I also think is better than 1, but I definitely don't think it's better than 3, so let's put that in the second spot for now. Track number 6 is also fairly boring, but I think it's definitely better than 1 and 5. Track number 7 is also better than 1 and 5, but I think because of the bobsleigh, I'll put that in the third spot behind track number 6. Track number 15 is probably the best track in this almost a plus tier track, so that one will go all the way at the front. Track number 16 is a decent track. I think it just barely beats out some of the earlier tracks, maybe just barely ahead of track number 3. Due to me not really liking NASCAR tracks too much and the track just being very hard to drive in general, I don't think I'm going back to number 17, so we'll leave that one all the way behind track number 1 there. Track number 20 is a pretty decent track. I definitely think it's better than track 16, but I think it's a pretty far distance behind 15 still. While track number 23 is not a type of dirt track I really care to drive, I still think it's one of the better tracks in this category, so let's put it all the way up here right behind track number 20. Track number 5 is alright. A lot of parts I, are alright with it. A lot of parts I just don't like though. So, for that reason, I'd rather play it than a NASCAR track, so go above 17. 1 is so boring though, so I'll put it above that. But I still think I'd rather play track number 5 more than track number 25. So, right between those two is good for me. Moving into the plus tier, I think track number 2 is pretty good, and it's definitely better than 8. I think track number 8 goes on maybe a little bit too long for my liking. It's still a good track, but honestly, if it was just 2 laps, I think I'd like it much more. But that brings us to track number 9, which I think is one of the better ones in the category, so I'm going to put track number 9 all the way up at the front for now. Track number 10, also pretty good, obviously. It's in the plus tier, and I do think it's better than track number 2. I do like full speed, so I'm a bit biased there, so, I'll put it at the second spot for now. Track number 18 is basically another full speed track, but this time it's on grass, so, I don't think it's better than a typical full speed track, so I think it's better than 2, but not as good as 10. That leaves us with track number 22. I think this is a extremely good track. It could use a couple of minor improvements that would put it up into the triple plus tier, but yeah, it's very, very good, and I think it is the best track in the plus tier. But finally, that brings us into the top 2 tracks. We got track number 19 and track number 21. Track number 19, very huntable. You're searching for perfect lines through the engine offs and the sausage blocks. Overall, again, yeah, it's just a very, very good, very addicting track to drive. But I do think track number 21 is a little bit better than that. Like track number 19, track number 21, very huntable. I think it's got a lot of mixed surfaces, which is also good for it because it does all of them extremely well. There's no part that feels like overtly bad outside of like the little tiny bobsleigh section I didn't care for, but that is so minor in such a small part of the track that I don't think it hurts it really that much. And overall, I think number 21 is a near perfect track for a black track in the campaign. And there we have it, the final list. Track number 21 coming in at the top spot, and track number 12 coming in all the way at the bottom. Overall, I think this was a pretty good campaign. The blue tracks were a pretty big weak spot for me though. This campaign also featured a lot of bobsleigh, which of course, as I mentioned earlier, not my favorite type of thing, and also a lot of the tracks just featured a lot of types of skips with reactor boosts, so that is a bit of a disappointment as well. I don't mind skips here and there, but there's so many tracks again that have them in this campaign, and it makes the leaderboards less fun to hunt, as you have to go for the skips in order to get higher on the leaderboards, and I really just don't want to do that for so many different tracks. I really have nothing against the skips, and I'm sure plenty of people do enjoy them quite a bit, so I'm glad they get something to enjoy this time around. Don't really want to drag the video on any longer though, so that'll do it for today's video. Something a little different, as this is really the first time I've done a tier list type video, so let me know how you enjoyed it, and if you did enjoy it, please like the video and subscribe. Check the description for links to my Twitch and Discord if you're interested in joining those locations, and be sure to check out all the other Trackmania content on the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.